welcome to Learning with Lulu. In this video we are going to do a summary and very brief analysis of chapter 6, which is all about Pearl, Hester's daughter, in the Scarlet Letter. Before we jump into it, please make sure to show your support for this channel by liking the video at the end of it if you like it, throughout the video. If you have any thoughts on anything said or shared, please make sure to comment them down below. And then also subscribe and share this with anyone else you know, whether friends, family, classmates, whatever, that you know it may benefit from having a summary and brief analysis of chapter 6 in the Scarlet Letter. So, as I said, this chapter is all about Pearl. Pearl is described as her mother's consolation. Also, at the same time, as a reminder of what happened and a reminder of her punishment. Throughout this chapter, you see a lot of these binaries, a lot of these dichotomies of Pearl's nature. Even the name itself, it describes Pearl as a beautiful child with a lot of very dark, rich features. It says she's got very dark eyes. And so her name, it's not reflective of someone with kind of these pearly features, but it's more reflective of her meaning to her mother. She was purchased at a great price for Hester, so she is her pearl. It says that she really is her mother's treasure. That in itself is a small reference to biblical verses that talk about, pearls being of great treasure, don't cast your pearls before swine, that kind of stuff. Like I said, Hester has become an outcast because of the act that created Pearl, and because the act that gave her life, that gave her existence, was essentially breaking the law of the time. Her very existence is a bit of an enigma in this Puritan society, especially the fact, just like the Scarlet Letter that Hester so beautifully embroidered, Pearl is described in this chapter as this, Hester calls her at times like an imp, but really she's just this fairy-like, flitting about, making imaginary play little girl. I believe she's 3 years old in the moments that this chapter takes to zero in on her. Even moments when she was an infant, there were some moments that kind of like unsettled Hester. Like there's this moment described that as an infant, Pearl first noticed the beautiful Scarlet Letter on her mother's chest before even really responding to her mother's smile. Anyway, this little girl, it's described as inheriting all of her mother's traits and behaviors of passion, essentially, and even defiance. And Hester is defiant in that, she's not running away. As a punishment, she was told to embroider the Scarlet Letter, and she makes it beautiful, so much so that it sets the fashion tone for important people and important events in the community. Girls inherited these kind of traits from her mother, traits that were kind of quieted since being in the situation she is now. Hester worries about her daughter. She worries about the fact that, she is kind of constantly making mischief. Anyone who knows any 3-year-olds though can see that that's kind of common to some degree in all little children. Play and testing boundaries, that's fairly natural for a young child. But Hester does worry about her, and she worries about the fact that this daughter of hers, this beautiful treasure, also is the result of sinful soil. At one part it's talking about how Pearl is ever her mother's companion. So in the sense that Hester is an outcast, Pearl also is. There's this scene where there are other children at play. It says on the margins of the city. Pearl watches but doesn't try to participate. There seems to be an understanding in her that she is not welcome, perhaps, and also just an outcast like her mother. So she's very perceptive. She's picking up on perhaps not only how her mother is treated, but also the subtle little treatments towards her. The children, an interesting note, the children that she sees playing on the margins of the town, I believe we've said this in another chapter, but kids repeat and act out what they see their parents do. It's interesting, the play that Pearl observes the other children engaging in are things like witchcraft or scalping Native Americans. Why are these Puritan children behaving in this way? And acting out these games. It's almost expressive of not only perhaps a children's morbid fascination, but that there's also this morbid fascination in their parents. Pearl, she creates imaginary people and situations, and I believe it says like the voice of the wind through some plant is like the voice of certain characters in her play, and she's very imaginative. But what's interesting is even these imaginary characters that she makes are never friendly characters. She's almost acting out her reality. If you know anything about like play therapy, where you're kind of trying to figure out what's going on in a child's life based on the scenes they act out in their play, and that's essentially what's happening with Pearl. She is not creating these imaginary friends to be companions and congenial. They're people to be defended against. And then there's this moment in the chapter, I believe it's the moment when infant Pearl was noticing the scarlet letter on her mother's dress. It says, Hester was looking into Pearl's eyes, kind of looking at her own reflection in the orb of her daughter's eyes, as mothers are sometimes prone to do. According to the book, I have 2 children, and I don't know that I've really looked for myself in their eyes. I'm just looking at my baby's eyes. The narrator says, you know, that's what she was doing. In her daughter's eyes, though, she saw a reflection that scared her, of like something demonical almost. And that's kind of a trait throughout this, where Pearl is just this ethereal, almost supernatural little creature. That's heightened by the fact that Hester picks out the most beautiful fabric and dresses her daughter gorgeously. And then this little fairy Pearl is, you know, playing and perhaps in a state of disarray. Yeah, and it describes it almost as like this beautiful, supernatural little imp fairy creature that Pearl is. I think she sounds delightful, personally. Anyway, there's this moment. Hester is trying to teach her about God, and it comes up because I think Pearl says something about who her father is, and she doesn't know who her father is, but she knows that there is a father, or there should be. And Hester just says, you know, your father in heaven is your heavenly father, and that's, you know, the patriarch that you will know in your life. She doesn't say that exactly, but that's me saying what she's essentially saying to her daughter. And then Pearl's response is, I have no heavenly father. It adds to this worry in Hester of like, where the heck did this little child come from? Pearl, then at the very end of the chapter, we get this scene where she is playing this game where she's throwing flowers at her mother. And whenever a flower hits the beautifully embroidered scarlet letter, she, you know, cheers for herself. And that's the game, is like getting flowers to hit the scarlet letter, which I think there's some analysis to be given there that just ties in with this whole theme of beauty and the natural world, and how nature is not offended by Hester. nature is not offended by Pearl. You know, if we move away from looking at spiritual things as only things in the metaphysical, but if we look at the physical realm as a manifestation of spiritual traits, and not in the religious sense, but like if we treat the physical as holy as well, then even just in the way that Hester and Pearl are described, they're described as beautiful and regal, and you know, nature is not offended by them. And so these pearls, or these flowers being thrown at the Scarlet Letter, I almost think of, you know, like flowers being given to honor someone or something. Let me know your thoughts on that, on what the flowers being thrown at Hester and specifically thrown at the Scarlet Letter could symbolize, or maybe what it's reminiscent of for you. In a moment of frustration, Hester says, "Child, what art thou?" With a very quick little wit, little Pearl, she doesn't try and answer her mom or laugh and say, "I don't know." She turns the question back on her mom. And she's insistent, like, "Yeah, Mom, where did I come from? Tell me." And Pearl, you know, she is curious about her own origins. Hester, I don't believe, tells her, you know, who her father is. Hester really does just wonder at this beautiful little contradictory daughter of hers. And I get the sense that she does adore her daughter and love her with like this motherly love. The fact that she likes to give her daughter the best of things and dress her up. I don't get the sense that she has any sort of resentment towards Pearl for being a product and being a constant reminder of her punishment. And she is, and like, there is this pain in Hester, but I don't get the sense that she takes it out on her daughter. I think she does really value and treasure this little innocent girl of hers. And at the same time, I feel like this chapter does heavily focus on, yes, she's innocent, but there's something to her. There's this little mischievousness. So is that because of her origins? And I don't think so. I think it's just that she is probably the one child in town. She's raised on the outskirts, raised as an outcast, so she doesn't have as much pressure to be a certain way. I think she's just being a natural, fun little kid. I think the idea of Pearl being this elfin little creature and her being what I think is just a natural little child, it shows us her humanness. I find Pearl a very relatable character. I have a 3-year-old little girl, and maybe that's why I think Pearl sounds so natural and cute. She just sounds like a 3-year-old little girl to me. Yeah, she seems more human. There's more humanity in her, I think, even with her little impish moments, than this Puritan society. You know, I don't have a lot of respect for this community that is being portrayed around Hester and Pearl. So a lot of my thoughts infused here in the analytical parts. But there is essentially a summary of chapter 6 in the Scarlet Letter. Please let me know your thoughts on Pearl as a character, on her relation to her mother, on her relation to the rest of the town, and yeah, just all these different little qualities that are attributed to her. With that being said, I hope this video has been useful to you. Please, again, comment, like the video, subscribe, and definitely share with others you know that are going to benefit from having a summary and brief analysis of chapters in the Scarlet Letter. Thank you for your support. Hope to see you back around, and thanks for watching.